If it's a compact £30,000 electric car that you're after, you are in luck. There are loads of new options just arriving on the market, and the new Ford Puma Gen-E and the Renault 4 E-Tech are two of the best. But possibly for the better, these two are very different. On the one hand, the Ford Puma, Britain's best-selling car, in petrol form at least, and now it is finally here in pure electric form. Now, this, very conventional, very familiar, and I think that that is exactly why people are going to like it. You get a 43 kilowatt hour battery with a WLTP range of up to 233 miles. The Renault, on the other hand, well, it's quite different, very distinctive, really kind of out there style. I think it looks fantastic. This actually slightly cheaper than the Ford, so it starts at £27,000. You're getting the same platform and battery as the Renault 5. So yeah, this is the tricky second album, isn't it, to the hugely popular Renault 5. So prices for the Renault 4 start at £27,000, while these start at £29,000. But if you go for the top spec trims that we have here, they're actually pretty close. So £31,000 here, £32,000 for the Ford. Let's have a closer look at the Ford then. It really is unmistakably a Puma. The blanked off fascia and the white font is the only big difference between the electric version and the standard petrol version. At 4.2 metres, the Ford is a touch longer than the 4.1 metre long Renault 4, and blimey, have Ford made use of all of that space. Look at how huge this boot is. I mean, it is absolutely enormous. So, really big, 523 litres, and look, you can lift this up, so it's all nice and flush with the boot. We like that. And this is what really excites me. Look at this. This is called the Gigabox. It is waterproof. It's got a plug in the bottom of it, so you can hose it out. I can't tell you, as a mum, as a dog owner, as somebody who turned 40 recently and is finding very boring things increasingly delightful, this makes me very, very happy. If I can hose it out, I want it. So well done, Ford. This is not just a huge boot. This is a huge reason to actually buy the Puma over its rivals, I think. There's a decent amount of space in the rear seats of the Puma, a touch more legroom I would say than in the Renault, although headroom is not that generous and there's no centre armrest. The kids will still be happy enough though, especially if you have the panoramic roof of our test car, which definitely makes it feel much lighter. Up front, the dash in the Ford is, well, it definitely looks more old-fashioned than the Renault's, and I would say doesn't feel quite as classy either in terms of the materials. Still, it's pretty easy to use, and the new software on that big touchscreen is relatively straightforward, and you get all the features you want, including wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So, we know that the Renault is a fraction smaller and a little bit cheaper than the Ford, but blimey, does it not make up for that size difference in cuteness? This is modern retro done right. Wow, it looks so cute. And I mean, this is an iconic test car. As of early next year, hopefully you should be able to get the scrolling fabric roof as well for that extra kind of Parisian chic feel, which I personally love. I love this colour as well, which is called Haute de France. I apologise immediately to France and all French-speaking people for my pronunciation there. Anyway, love the colour. It's very cool. I just think it's such a great looking car. And although it isn't as spacious in the boot as in the Ford, it's still pretty good. 420 litres in here, and you get a pretty snazzy underfloor storage, all of that stuff, so it's really useful, and really nice low load lip, so you have got a lower load lip than in the Ford. And I would add, this is still a bigger boot than you get in the Volkswagen ID3, so it's still a really useful family car. Rear passenger space in the Renault is more than adequate for a compact family car, but it does feel a bit dark back there, and you don't get a lot of space under those front seats for your feet either. If you really want decent rear passenger space in a compact electric car of this price, it could well be worth checking out the Citroën C3 Aircross, which I would say has better rear passenger accommodation than either of the cars in this test. Mind you, the Renault's got one of the coolest interiors in the class in terms of the styling. Yes, it's pretty much identical to the Renault 5, but if it ain't broke and all that. I love the material finish and the retro textiles that you get on this iconic spec particularly. I also like the infotainment with its built-in Google Maps and apps, not to mention CarPlay and Android Auto, plus I really like those physical aircon buttons. There's definitely a bit less dependence on the screen in the Renault than there is in the Ford. So, what is the Renault 4 like to drive? Well, it will come as no surprise that it is quite similar to the Renault 5, but it is set up a little bit differently. It's a bit of a taller car as well, and I mean, I think more importantly, it's just that it's really nice to drive. So you notice there's this little button on the steering wheel called multi-sense. It's not terribly obvious, is it? But that is actually drive modes. And it toggles you through comfort, sport, perso, which is like your sort of individual settings that you choose. That's all good. Eco, all the usual really. I personally just like it in comfort. I like the nice light steering. Feels really kind of, responds quickly enough, the steering. It feels really kind of wieldy, perfect for about town stuff. And yet, I mean, I was mostly on the motorway on the way up here in this today. It feels really planted, really confident. Both of these cars, the Renault and the Ford, you are not going to think twice about doing a longer motorway journey. They're really nice. Quiet, comfy, really stable, not a problem at all. And yet they're both really good kind of urban, nimble, little school run car type things. Brilliant. Really good for that balance of compact but useful and mature. Really good. And the Renault is really good fun as well. So front wheel drive, 150 brake, 0 to 62 in about 8.2 seconds. And it feels really, even in comfort mode, you know, it picks up really nicely. It's good fun. You can enjoy a nice road in the Renault, you really can. You can also stick it in sport and everything sort of tightens up a bit. That's all good. One of the most important things about the Renault 4 is that it's got a new regen system compared to the Renault 5. So it's got paddles on the steering wheel and you can toggle through 3 different levels of brake regen right through to 1 pedal mode. And I think it's a really good system because I really like sort of high-end IKEA style, isn't it? Having it on the steering wheel gives you complete control. And I personally like to use brake regen almost like you might use a downshift in a gearbox for an automatic car, petrol or diesel car, so you can use it to slow yourself down rather than using the brake pedal. Talking about the brake pedal, this is one of very few things that annoys me about the Renault, is that the brake pedal in this right-hand drive car is sort of set too high compared to the throttle. So when I've got my driving position set up to feel nice and natural compared to where the steering wheel is and the dash and all of that stuff and the throttle pedal, which is very easy to do. Manual seat adjustment, but with electric lumbar adjustment in this top spec car. Really nice driving position actually. Does feel a bit dark in here compared to the Puma with its optional panoramic roof, I will say that. But other than that, nice driving position. But yeah, the brake pedal, it feels weirdly high. I'm really conscious of the fact that it makes my foot feel kind of uncomfortably up. It's just odd. Doesn't feel quite right. It's a very short travel brake pedal as well. Really nice feel. The actual braking performance and the feel that you get in the brake performance, good, absolutely brilliant, fine, no problem at all. I just wish that the brake pedal wasn't quite so sort of high. Feels a bit odd. So apart from that, I really like everything about the Renault. I like the way it drives. I think, well, go and drive the Puma in a minute, but I think I'd say that the Renault feels a bit more comfortable. I think it's got a slightly better ride. This is on 18-inch wheels, this car, whereas the Ford is on 19s, so that's something. So we'll have a go in the Ford and see what that's like. But this rides really nicely. I think this is going to be the comfier of the two cars. It's really good. It's just it feels very light, it feels wieldy, and yet it feels nice and grown up and composed and exactly what you want it to be. Fun, yet sensible. So I think Renault have struck a really nice balance there. Very good. When it comes to real world range, you should expect to see around 170 to 220 miles from the Renault, and we're actually seeing much the same summer range from the Ford despite its smaller battery. We're having to estimate winter range as we've not driven either of these cars in cold conditions, but you may well see better results from the Renault as it gets a standard heat pump. I do want to talk about efficiency in the Ford because, as I've said, WLTP range of up to 233, a bit less than that if you go for the top spec car here, but that's from such a tiny battery, 43 kilowatt hour usable. Now, for some context, so that Renault has a similar range, even though it's got a 52 kilowatt hour usable capacity. That's a big difference, 9 kilowatt hour for a very similar range, so it just shows how efficient the Ford is. And I will talk about real world range in just a second, but basically what it means is you're going to pay a bit less per mile to run the Ford than you are for the Renault. And the Renault is not an inefficient car, let me point that out as well. It's not bad at all for that. But the Ford is particularly good. Do I think that Ford should maybe have given the Puma a slightly bigger usable capacity, because it's got a 53 kilowatt hour total, so there are 53 kilowatt hours of battery capacity in this car, but only 43 of them are usable. So that's a massive buffer, quite unusual that. I do think Ford could have maybe given it a little bit more usable capacity and a longer range. It's a very efficient car, and I like that about the Ford a lot, and I thought it was worth highlighting. It's also good fun. I really like the way the Ford drives. It's got it's quite heavy steering, still really easy to manoeuvre, drive around town absolutely peachy, but it's got a bit more bite to it than most other sort of little EVs at this range, and definitely slightly heavier than the Renaults. Really nice kind of grip. You can really swing it gamely through corners. The ride is firm enough that you can feel what's going on the road surface, but it's really well damped. 165 brake horsepower, front wheel drive, 0 to 62 in 8 seconds, and that performance actually feels pretty punchy and really appropriate for UK roads. I like it. I think the Ford genuinely is quite fun and yet also very easy and natural to drive. I think the way it drives is going to be really comforting to those people who might be coming to this as their first EV as well, because it does feel very ordinary to drive effectively. It does have a one pedal mode, which you activate in the screen. It does annoy me that you can't activate that just with a physical button or something like that. But through the screen, and you can put your one pedal mode on, and then the car, basically it's braking heavily when you lift off the throttle, so you barely need to use the brake pedal at all. And around town it works really, really well. In fact, I don't mind one pedal mode out in faster driving these days because I'm very used to it. But like I said, if you come into the Ford as your first EV, that is the one aspect you will need to familiarise yourself with. Other than that, when you've got it off and the regen is very mild and easy to get on with, honestly, you'll be fine. It just feels like a normal car to drive, like a normal Ford Puma. And that is a good thing because the Puma's great to drive, as is the Gen-E. So well done, Ford. It's very, very nice. Both of these cars charge at up to 100 kilowatts, which is very competitive with all of their rivals and is good for a 100-mile top-up in around about 25 to 30 minutes. They also have battery preconditioning that will get the battery up to the best operating temperature for optimum charging speeds, provided you plug the charging stop into the car's nav well in advance. Okay, so that is mostly what you need to know about these two cars, but before I pick a winner, I do want to talk about the boring but important stuff, so the finances with these two. I have checked out PCP finance deals with a £5,000 deposit, 3-year contract. Both of these come in at just under £400 per month, so they're really, really close. And actually, it's very much the same story with leasing. Similar price, similar contract terms, so if you're looking at paying monthly, they're going to come in quite close, I think. Now, there are other aspects of this. So for a start, the Renault falls into a much higher insurance group than the Ford. So if that's a significant factor for you, then do make sure you get a quote, because that could be quite a big difference in price. Ford also offers something called the Power Promise, which is quite a good sweetener because you get 5 years free servicing, free home charger, and they will even throw in 10,000 miles of electricity if you go with their partner utilities provider. So that really is quite a good deal, but both of them, 3-year, 60,000 mile warranty, which is fine, industry standard, bit whelming next to Kia, Hyundai, MG, all of that lot. That's how it breaks down. They're both really, really close in terms of the finances, I think. The Ford possibly going to be slightly cheaper overall, but there's not much in it at all, no matter how you're paying, really. If this were my money, well, I would go for the Renault because it's very much a style thing. I just want one of these on my driveway. It would make me feel good. I love the interior, and I do think that the usability of that infotainment system, the physical switchgear and the touchscreen and how that all works together, I really, really love it. So that is what would swing it for me with the Renault. However, given the boot, given the Power Promise and the ownership stuff with the Ford, I can absolutely see why you'd go for it. And it's a really efficient little thing. So I do think that Ford's turned out a nice EV there. But for my money, I would definitely be taking the Renault. Don't forget to head to CarGurus.co.uk for a whole host of fantastic used cars, loads of really good value used EVs out there as well. And while you're here, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the CarGurus UK YouTube channel, and turn your notifications on so that you don't miss any of our videos.